Hi everyone, I'm John Renney and welcome to the Boneyard. Some movies get a certain stigma and have a reputation that comes with them, and the movie that I want to talk about today definitely has that in spades.
Hey! What are you doing? You know better than that. That's just how accidents happen.
It's a movie that was considered part of the Cultural Revolution in late 1960s America.
Sammy, look around you. The world belongs to the young.
And it began the career of its esteemed director, who came from the college of famed producer Roger Corman, who was responsible for breaking a lot of talent into the industry, including Francis Ford Coppola, Martin Scorsese, Penelope Spheeris, Dante, Stephanie Rothman, and Jonathan Demme, to name but a few. So, please join me for this quick review as we take a look at a counterculture classic that sets contemporary society in the rifle scopes of a killer. This is Peter Bogdanovich's Targets.
I'll take it.
Targets was directed by Bogdanovich and released in 1968, and in my opinion, is without doubt one of the most chilling movies of the time period. Similar to George Romero's Night of the Living Dead, the film takes horror out of the past and dark cobwebbed castles and puts the horror right next door. My first reactions to it is that it feels like a cold hand on the back of the neck, as Targets tells a story that is a reflection on the societal anxieties of 1960s American culture.
My kind of horror isn't horror anymore. There you are. Look at that. No one's afraid of a painted monster.
Bogdanovich is a director whose name became synonymous with his next Oscar-winning feature, The Last Picture Show.
JC, we're having supper at home tonight. I expect you there in 15 minutes. You hear?
Okay, Mama. I was just giving the boys a ride.
Hey, Adeline.
Which was produced by the team behind Easy Rider, who, after they saw Targets, offered Bogdanovich any film that he wanted to make.
The people who produced Easy Rider, ironically, saw the picture, and they got in touch with me and said, anything I ever want to make, I should come to them first. And I eventually came to them with a book called The Last Picture Show, and they made it. It wouldn't happen without Targets, which wouldn't happen without Roger, which wouldn't happen without Karloff. And so that's how it goes in the movie business. One thing leads to another.
And I can see why they would have snapped up the young Hollywood director, as Targets is one heck of a smart movie and shows amazingly skilled cinematic storytelling on a budget of just over $100,000. The movie stars horror legend Boris Karloff in a late career role, and Bogdanovich uses his legacy as part of the plot for Targets, and cleverly comments on the fact that the audience for horror has changed.
Oh, I know how people think of me these days. Old-fashioned, outmoded.
And it is no longer Frankenstein and Dracula that society is afraid of, but the horror out there in the streets.
What you hunt this time? Gonna shoot some pigs. Good luck.
In my humble opinion, this movie really is an incredibly important film, similar to Hitchcock's low-budget shocker Psycho and Michael Powell's Peeping Tom that came several years before, which are both lower-budget movies that brought horror creeping and screaming into the modern age.
Yes, that would be frightening.
And I'm 100% sure that Bogdanovich knew that he was building on these movies about American psychos, as throughout his career, he was a writer and a critic and a student of the art of cinema and of Hitchcock, and was part of the new wave of directors influenced by studio movies, by the likes of Samuel Fuller, Howard Hawks, John Ford, and movies in the golden age of Hollywood.
Howard Hawks directed this.
I know. Thanks to him, it was my first really important part.
Targets is a mix of the style of old Hollywood techniques and new wave filmmaking and editing that for me works perfectly to tell the contemporary story of a seemingly ordinary young man who embarks on a killing spree.
What are you typing? Aren't you gonna go to work?
And I have to say that the killer in this movie is terrifying, as it is random acts of violence that for me are the scariest of all things, and they leave little or no explanation as to why Bobby, the all-American boy next door, just snapped.
I don't know what's happening to me.
Why?
I get funny ideas.
Personally, as a student of film myself, I have to talk a little bit about the film's incredible production story, as I think that Targets is a must-see for all filmmakers who are just beginning their careers, as it is a smart movie and was born out of necessity. Roger Corman offered Peter Bogdanovich, who had been his assistant on his film The Wild Angels, the chance to direct his first feature film under two conditions.
So Roger, I think, felt I'd made some contribution and offered me the opportunity to make my own film. And he said, okay, here's the situation. Boris Karloff owes me 2 days' work. Now, what I'd like you to do is shoot about 20 minutes with Boris Karloff in those 2 days. You can shoot 20 minutes in 2 days. I've shot whole pictures in 2 days. Coincidentally, some months back, the editor of Esquire, Harold Hayes, had said to me, why don't you make a movie about Charles Whitman? Charles Whitman was a fellow who'd gone to the tower, University of Texas, and randomly shot a whole bunch of people. And I thought, if Karloff's in the movie, maybe he could be an actor. And maybe he could be an actor who wants to quit because his kind of horror, this kind of Victorian horror stuff, was pretty old-fashioned compared to somebody who goes to a tower and just randomly picks people up. That was modern horror.
Together with his partner Polly Platt, Bogdanovich created a script that ingeniously met Corman's requirements.
And then I want you to take 20 minutes of Karloff footage from a picture I made called The Terror. So I'll have 20 minutes that you shoot with Karloff, 20 minutes of The Terror, that's 40 minutes, and then you add another 40 minutes with some other actors, and that'll be a new 80-minute Karloff picture. Will you do it? I said, okay.
The story they wrote weaves together two intertwining narratives. One follows Karloff and Bogdanovich playing a young director himself,
I wrote a hell of a picture for you.
and Karloff as an old horror star, now disillusioned with his career,
God, what an ugly town this has become.
and the other involves Bobby, a young man who loads up his trunk with rifle-sighted weapons and goes on a murder spree. The intersection of these stories creates a commentary on the changing nature of horror in contemporary society, and I think Bobby, played by Tim O'Kelly, is one of the most terrifying killers that I've ever seen on screen. He is so ordinary, but at the same time, there's a way that he constantly eats candy bars and
Hi, Roy.
calmly packs a lunch for his day of killing that just terrifies me. It truly is an ugly and terrifying portrayal of an all-American boy turned killer. When it was released, Targets was met with some controversy from the studio, as at the time there were two assassinations that shocked the world with the tragic deaths of Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy, and the movie was shelved for a while, as it was considered maybe it was bad taste to release a film about an assassin after these two high-profile murders. However, when it was released a few months later, many critics recognized that Bogdanovich's direction was unique in its approach to modern horror, and that the movie had something to say with its commentary on contemporary violence, that horror is all around us, and it can strike at any time.
I have 300 rounds of the 30-06.
Okay.
Oh, and a box of the 12 gauge.
What size?
$4.
It's a movie that to this day still gives me chills.
Eileen? Bobby?
I will say that if you decide to give the film a watch after this review, there are some upsetting violence and scenes of death that involve children in the film that may seem a bit tame by today's standards, but be ready for those if you do decide to watch, as these scenes were genuinely upsetting for me, but I went into this expecting a damn good psychological horror movie, and that's exactly what I got.
Hey, what are you doing? Hey!
Some of the sets are pretty rough looking in the film, and I'm sure they will date the film significantly for some viewers, but keep in mind that this was an extremely low budget movie, even for its day. The artifice of the sets actually added an extra layer of visual depth for me, as the killer's doily draped tables and bare pastel colored walls seemed to add even more to the insanity of the character. I know I'm reaching a little bit there and maybe reading into it too much, and the filmmaker himself said that it was a result of the low budget, but it's fun to dissect these things and bring along new ideas. I guess you take away from movies what you bring to it. It's safe to say that the Boneyard recommends Peter Bogdanovich's Targets, as it's an important film from a decade that changed cinema, and it has a lot of ideas crammed into it, from a young director giving it his all.
It made my headache worse. You do that lousy PA instead of my movie.
But as I say, be prepared that the movie does look very 60s
Let's hear him. Yeah, groovy.
and suffers a little from its low budget, but not too much. To me, it's an excellent movie that transcends its low budget to deliver a powerful and, I would say, thought-provoking movie.
That what I was afraid of.
Thanks for watching. If you would like to hear more from me about Bogdanovich and other counterculture classics, please remember to like and subscribe. Let me know what you think about Targets in the comments below. And as always, thank you all so much for listening.